Hi, I'm Brooke, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Beam Boldly. As an NCAA Division I gymnast, I know firsthand what it feels like to carry the weight of performance, expectations, and identity. Here, we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about mental health, performance anxiety, NIL, resilience, and of course, how faith is our foundation that carries us through all of that. Whether it's stepping onto the beam in competition or just stepping out in everyday life, we are called to live boldly, and we're called to let our light shine. The name Beam Boldly was inspired by the verse Matthew 5:16, which says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." To me, that's what this podcast is all about. So if you're ready to hear raw conversations, find strength in faith, and be reminded that you are never walking this journey by yourself, join me as we step boldly into everyday life.
Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Beam Boldly. I'm super excited for today because we actually have a little podcast collaboration with the Beyond the Struggle podcast. Welcome, Caroline Bauer and Allison Wilson. So happy to have you guys here.
Oh, we're so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yes, thank you. We're honored.
Yes. This is so fun. So for those of you guys that don't know, Caroline and Allison both ran track and field at University of Florida, which is my hometown. So I think that's just, yes, so that's my hometown. Yeah, we're going to have a whole Gainesville talk after this.
We will.
Yeah, let's dive in. I would love for y'all to just start by basically catching me up on your life, bring me up to date, kind of a little bit about your story, your testimony, and then what you guys are doing now.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, you go first. Yeah.
Okay, so both of us, like you said, used to run track and cross country at the University of Florida. We're both retired athletes. We both work from home now, so it's super, super cool. Like, we're both roommates. We're in very, very similar seasons of life, so that has been such a blessing. So this year has truly just been a season of like transition and like kind of adapting to this new way of living, I guess. So that's been super fun. Just been really enjoying that. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like, yeah, Allison graduated in the summer. She got her master's, and then I graduated in the winter. So I'm like 2 years behind her, but I got my undergrad from University of Florida. And then
Awesome.
yeah, kind of just navigating this whole post-grad thing. We'll get into our stories like a little bit later. I know you asked for our testimonies, but basically kind of a little bit about my story. I medically retired from the track team back in March of 2025. So that was like right before the summer when you graduated, and basically was like, need to heal the body, like not going to run for a while. And that was the case. Like, I needed to take time, and I graduated a semester early because I ran out of credits to take. And I've just been navigating, like getting back into healing my body, learning how to move and train in a different way that works for my body. And I've been navigating like who Caroline is outside of track, which has been really fun. And we say we're like stay at home. What do we say we are? Like,
we're like stay at home
moms. Kind of.
Except
like
we do have jobs, but like we kind of live that lifestyle. So it's been really fun.
Yeah.
That's
so like our
hilarious.
jobs are remote. So we kind of get to like do our daily routine from home. And it's just a blessing because we're both leaving in the summer, end of the summer, and kind of transitioning to the next stage of our lives. And it's been a blessing to be together and kind of navigate this together. Actually, like the same seasons we've been in. Maybe she's always been like 6 months ahead of me, right?
Aww.
Yeah. So
It's really cool. Like, our friendship is really cool because God really puts the right people in your life at the right time. And I did undergrad at the University of Alabama. That's where I ran track and cross country for a couple years. And then I transferred here back in 2023. And it was very unexpected. Did not expect to go to grad school, did not expect to transfer, did not expect to run collegiately again. And God made it so known. And she was my host. And so that was super, super cool, very full circle that I met her on my visit. We became teammates. Now we're best friends. We're roommates. So that's been a huge blessing. And it was a blessing to run at Florida as well. And I graduated this past May. I got my master's degree in hospitality, tourism, and event management. And now I'm just kind of like navigating adult life. But it was such a fruitful season. And as you know, as being like a Gainesville resident or prior Gainesville resident, I love Gainesville. I love Florida. Like I'm such a Florida girl now. So
Oh,
such a blessing.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're such Gainesville girls. Like everyone's like,
Really?
oh, yes. Oh my god, we love it.
Gainesville.
We don't want to leave. We like cry when we think about it.
Oh my gosh. Wait, where are y'all from originally?
So I'm from the Houston area, like Houston,
Okay.
like suburbs of Houston. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia. You probably haven't heard of there.
Well, both very different from Florida.
Yes.
very
Is
different.
all I gotta say.
Yes, for sure.
That's awesome. So throughout, your upbringing and everything, where did you realize like, oh my gosh, I want to run in college? Like, what was that moment?
For me, I grew up and my parents put me in so many different sports. So I did soccer, I did tumbling for a year. That did not go very well for me. I did, just so many different sports, basketball. And whenever I got to basketball, I was super passionate about it. Was not the very best at it, but I loved it. And that was my dream. Like I really wanted to play basketball. I don't know about collegiately, but I definitely wanted to play it in like middle school, high school. And so I got to middle school and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to play basketball. I'm going to try out for the team. And so I was trying out for the team in 8th grade and the basketball coach was like, hey, if you want to like better your chances of making the team, you have to run cross country. That was like the conditioning, like track or cross country. And I was like, there's no way. And I told her right then and there, and I'm not a very bold person, but right then and there, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be in the back of the pack. Like, I'm not going to be good. And she was like, well, if you want to better your odds, try out for the team. And so I was like, okay. So I started running cross country, ended up loving it. And it became such a good like mental outlet for me. Like 8th grade was a really, really mentally tough year for me. And I had a lot of things behind the scenes going on. And so running was my outlet and it became something that I loved. And so I ended up making the basketball team because of cross country, but I dropped it going into high school and went like all in with cross country, which was so unexpected. I just remember in elementary school, I was in PE. I could barely run a lap. I was like just not having it, not there for it. So it's very funny that happened, but just bought into it and I loved it and I still love it. And it's such a good outlet for me. And it's where I met like some of my lifelong friends and just such a huge blessing. So
that's awesome. I love how God always steps in the things that we're like, absolutely not. Like, whoa, that's not me. Like, I would never do that. I mean, I even think if you would have told me 3 years ago, like, you have a podcast, I'd be like, really?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. Okay. But yeah, that's such a cool story. Okay. Caroline, what about you?
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. We can relate to the podcast thing too. Cause like, yeah, if you told us like 3 years ago, first of all, if you told me 3 years ago who Allison Wilson, I'd be like, well, not that
who's
I didn't know. I'd be like, who's that? Yeah. Like, and
so
you had no idea who I was. Yeah. Anyways, long story short, going into my freshman year of high school, I was a big swimmer. That was my thing. Like all my goals were related to swimming. I was 14 and I kind of hit my prime in swimming and it was looking up for me. And I was like, all right, like I had a lot of accolades in swimming and I was about to go into high school. So I had a lot of goals in swimming. And going into that summer, we had like a pretty big summer as far as like recruiting went. And like, as far as I know, gymnastics, you get recruited young, same with swimming. And that was the biggest summer, like the best summer I'd swam. But I got a rotator cuff injury that summer. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like my career's over. Like they were like, you can't swim on it right now. Like you have to just kick with the board. And my doctor was like, you've specialized too young. Like I only did swimming at that point besides dance. I did dance, but wasn't helping my swimming. Let me tell you that. So anyways, I just was like, well, I can't do any of the other sports. I like, just like Allison, like when I was a kid, I did all the sports. I tried all the sports and I was really awful. Like at any hand-eye coordination, no. Ball sports,
that's
no.
the same for me. Oh my gosh.
Ball sport. Okay, but you're gymnast. Like
No. But like you guys don't understand anything that involves like throwing or catching, like zero talent. Like no.
Yeah.
It's like a hard no. And everyone's always so confused with that because they're like, how do you flip and you catch the bar and you swing on this and that and whatever? It is like so different. Like watching me throw, I mean, my dad actually played baseball at UF. And so you think I'd have that gene? If I tried to like pitch a baseball, like that would be like the laughing stock of the century.
Yeah, I have so much respect for baseball players, basketball players. We've had like so many different athletes on our podcast that are like hand-eye coordinating sports. Holy smokes, I could never ever do that.
But anyways, yeah, so I was like, no, I can't do any of those sports. But he was like, well, right now you're gonna have to choose another sport because you can't, if in order to get back healthy, like you can't just focus on swimming. And I said, okay. So I was like, well, perfect time to try a different sport because I'm going into freshman year of high school. Well, the
Right.
sport that all my friends were doing that was no cuts was cross country. So I was like, awesome, no cuts. So I joined and I ended up being pretty good. It's funny because I was just like you, I hated running. Anytime they made us run laps at swim practice, when we got to the other side where the coach couldn't see, I started walking and I was so bad. And so anyone like would have been like, but I don't know, something about cross country and I just wanted to prove myself and I loved it. It was just like swimming. It wasn't as hard as swimming and you could talk while you were running. And I love to talk. So it was awesome. I had a lot of fun with it. And then, yeah, come COVID time, this was my sophomore year of high school. I only did cross country at that point. Like I didn't do track. But then sophomore year of high school over COVID, the pool shut down. And I was like, well, time to get into this whole running thing because I didn't take it seriously at all. I only ran twice a week and I swam every other time. And so I really was not prepared when it came to the 5K races we had to do. But I don't know. I just liked the fun of it. I did not care. But over COVID, I was like, all right, I'm going to start taking this seriously. And then that's when I kind of started being recruited for running, wasn't being recruited as many places for swimming. I was being recruited for running. So I was like, oh, maybe I should go all into this running thing and see where it takes me. So then I quit swimming and then the rest is history. But
Wow. Yeah. I relate to your story of like committing to swimming so much because like that's very relatable to gymnastics. Like I was told at 9 years old, like you have to choose between gymnastics, dance, and soccer. Like you can only do one because whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're talking to a 9-year-old. I wouldn't have known what I wanted at all. But again, like so cool that you were all in on swimming. Like, oh, this is my thing. And God changed the narrative. And like, I'm sure you wouldn't regret that at all. Like, look where you are now. So exciting.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, God works in mysterious ways because I feel like he'll really put you in places where like I would say there's no way I could do that, kind of like what we were talking about. That's so uncomfortable, but then he kind of prunes you through it. And then once you get on the other side, you're like, wow, thank you, Lord.
Exactly. No, so good. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit about or a little background of like your sport, but tell me about the background of your guys' faith. Like did you always grow up in the church? How did you meet Jesus?
Yeah, I say that I'm very, very blessed because so both my parents are divorced, but I grew up half Catholic, half non-denominational, and I took that as a huge, huge blessing because I had the ability, well, not only that, but like I was so blessed that both my parents were believers. That was a huge, huge plus, but also like I had the ability to kind of like go to each church, go to different youth groups, camps, things like that, really see like how do I best receive the gospel? Like how do I best hear Jesus, I guess. Ultimately, like I fell in love with the non-denominational church and that was like a huge part of my life, the youth group, things like that. And so all throughout high school, I like had Christian friends, everything like that. But I really fell in the trap that I think a lot of athletes do of identifying through my sport and through my performance. And I was finding a lot of success. And especially my junior year, when I knew that I was going to go D1 in college, I started critiquing myself on everything. I was very critical of what I ate. I was very clean with what I ate. I was very critical about my performance, even practice, very, very critical of myself. I had to run a certain time, run a certain pace. And for any runners out there, you know, it's not that deep. When it comes to workouts and stuff, yes, that's important, but for regular runs, not very important. I put a lot of pressure on myself that was not necessary. And I really got caught up in this identity of like Allison the runner. And I think a lot of people around me put that identity like on myself as well. You know, I got shouted out on the morning announcements and that really got to my head. I was like, I'm that girl, you know? And then I realized, you know, it's not all about running. And I think I realized that once I got to college and I was with the big dogs, everybody was doing so well. And like, I was just kind of like washing up with all these people around me that were so talented. And I was like, I'm really not that great, And then I got my first ever injury at the end of my freshman year. I got a sacral stress fracture, and that was a huge setback in my career. It was like a 3-month recovery, so that was huge. Before that, I had never taken more than like 2 weeks off of running, so I was also mentally just going through it. In freshman year, that was COVID for me, or like going into my sophomore year, that was COVID. So that whole period was very, very trying for me because I was being tested. I was also injured, and all I knew was, I'm going to go out for a run if I'm going through it, but I couldn't do that. I just, was sitting at home. So I really dove into the gospel then, and I really got like so much closer to Jesus then. I joined like a virtual Bible study over COVID, so that was really helpful as well. And then ultimately went back to school and fell into a lot of sin. I got into a relationship that was not God-centered. It was not good for me, and I think I learned a lot during that relationship. It was a 3-year relationship that was not godly. And so really fell off track for 3 years, like very derailed, kind of like threw all the stuff that I had learned over COVID down the drain, and just kind of fell off. And then my senior year in college, I guess that was like 2 years that I was really falling down in sin. But my senior year in college, this is like a prime example of how God will put people in your life that you need. So I had a teammate at Alabama, and she called me one random day my junior year, and she's like, "Hey, do you have a roommate for next year?" And I was like, "Actually, no, I don't." And she was like, "Oh, like, do you want to be roommates?" And I was like, "Sure." And I remember I was at the gym and I was so caught off guard, and I was like, "Oh, like, this is so random." And so I was roommates with her senior year. I don't think she truly knows how much she changed my life, but she completely changed my life.
Wow.
The way that she lives her life, she was dating her boyfriend at the time that is now her husband, and their relationship was God-centered. I was able to see into that and able to see into how she, I don't know, like showed up in that relationship and was such a good girlfriend, now such a good wife, and such a good person in general, and how much she loved Jesus and really like chased after her faith. And I saw into that and I was like, wow, I want that. I love that. And so I started reading my Bible every single day starting January, I think it was January 2023. I was like, I'm just going to give this a shot again. Let's just like go all in. So I started reading in Proverbs. I did 31 days of Proverbs for January. It completely changed my life. I feel like I got so much wisdom from Proverbs because it's all about wisdom, godly wisdom. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm leaving this relationship. I'm like going all in with Jesus. And then I feel like God also brought this idea of transferring into my life as well. And I would love to tell that story in a bit because I feel like that's a little bit of a tangent. But that was like such a crazy situation. And then I came to Florida on a visit, fell in love with it. Carol was my host. And I just knew, like, on the plane coming to Florida, I felt like God was like, this is where you're going to school. And I got off the plane and I was like, oh, I want to commit on my visit. Like, I want to tell them I want to go here. And I was like, no, I'm going to have self-control. I'm going to think and pray about this. And I feel like God just kept saying, Florida, Florida, Florida. And so I committed and I came here, met some of my very best friends, met my now boyfriend. It's just such an amazing experience. Started this podcast. So God has truly refined me and changed my life. And I feel like my story is a living testament that you're never too far gone. And God can truly transform your life. Even if you feel like you went down the wrong path, he can save you and you can go on the next one. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I want to ask real quick. Okay, so you're on the plane ride to Florida. You're like, you feel like God's saying Florida, Florida, Florida. What was that like? Was that like you actually felt like you were hearing God, or it was like a feeling in your heart that was, not your own? Give me a little like insight into how you knew that like that wasn't just a random thought, but it was like actually the Lord like leading you that direction.
Well, that's a great question. And I always ask people to like, how did you hear from God? Because I know everyone can hear God in different ways. And for me, I feel like it is a feeling in my heart. Like I feel comfort, I feel peace. It's not like an audible voice, even though I feel like that would be awesome if I could hear God's voice.
Right. But I'm the same way. I'm like, that would be so cool. And like, I'm expectant one day God is going to do it.
You're going to hear him. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm the same way that it's like a unconditional like peace and comfort.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't listening to music. I don't remember listening to music. I was looking out the window. It was super dark outside because it was a night flight, and there were just like lights like shining all over, and I was just like in prayer, and I was like, God, just please make it known if I'm going to go here. And I just felt so much peace in my heart. And it was peace that like truly transcends all understanding. Like you guys have felt it. If you feel like God is leading you somewhere, that feeling you get, and you just know it's a God feeling. So that was truly what that was.
That is awesome. What an amazing story. And it's so good. Such a good reminder that just like you said, you're never too far gone. It doesn't matter what age you are, whether you're 12 listening to this podcast or, you're 25, like Jesus is there and all he wants you to do is like turn to him. That's all he wants.
Exactly.
So absolutely love that. Caroline, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, well, first off, I just have to say, like from the outside perspective, I was her host, and our coaches, they used to coach at University of Alabama, so they were her coaches first
Oh my gosh.
for 2 years, and then they ended up being my coaches for 2.5 years here. But I was a freshman. This was the end of my freshman year, and Coach Palmer was like, "Hey, like we're gonna have this girl named Allison Wilson." He kind of gave me her backstory, like, so she competed for 2 years, then she medically retired, and now she's like competing so well on the roads, and we want to have her, and all these things. And he's like, "You're gonna host her, you're gonna take her to church," all these things. I was like, yeah, I kid you not, she gets here, we hit it off right away, and I was like, okay, so she has to come here. So I didn't know that you were like ready to commit right away, because she made it. I was like, of course I'm like the kind of pushy, like I'm the pushy
You're
host.
the
It's
host.
like, oh, I'm like, so I'll see you, right? Yeah, you're gonna come here, right? And she's like, she's a little bit more like reserved, and she's like, hopefully I'll get to see you.
And I wanted to tell you so bad on that visit, like, I'm coming here.
Meanwhile, I remember a conversation with Coach Palmer afterwards. So this was after Allison left, and this was like the day after we were debriefing. We were on the pole vault pit outside at the track, and I was sitting there, and I don't even know if I told you, maybe I did. And he was like, "So how do you think the visit went?" I like kind of was explaining how I thought the visit went, and I was like, "I really like Allison. I hope she comes." And I was like, I hope she comes. I hope she comes. Meanwhile, she'd already called and committed with him, but he didn't tell me. And he's like, yeah, I really hope she comes. And then like that Saturday, he told me, and he was like, oh yeah, by the way, she committed like 3 days ago. I just didn't tell you. And I was like, what?
That's a big secret to keep. I would have bursted.
Bro, I was like, man, like, do you think she's going to come? And they were like, I don't know. She might go to Ole Miss or something. I don't know. There was like another school. Yeah. I don't know. But anyways, they were just joshing with me. They were pulling me, Shout out. Anyways, though, so my story. Yeah, mine's very similar to yours. Definitely in high school, like the whole, I don't know, I'm from a small town, everyone knows you type deal. And I think that got to my head for sure, because newspaper articles, again, the morning announcements, things like that. So then I felt very much like my identity was in running, and that was the only thing that I was. And I think that my faith, I love my church and I love my leaders and things, but it's a very small community, and I didn't have a lot of people who were really trying to live out faith while being an athlete. So I was very compartmentalized. I think I was like, oh, well, yeah, Caroline, like the Christian's over here, but like Caroline the runner, like, no, like Caroline the Christian doesn't touch Caroline the runner. And it showed in the way I treated people, and it showed in the way the music I listened to, the things I told myself, and it worked for a season, and I was running fast, but that was just who I was, right? And so I definitely think that I prayed before I raced, but I feel like maybe Jesus was a little bit more of a good luck charm. And I'm ashamed to say it, but I got to college, and well, basically my community around me was always praying for me, and my family and my parents. And I grew up in a Christian home. My dad's an elder at my church. I grew up being counseled and prayed for by people in my church. And I'm so grateful like for their prayers today, because I truly felt this peace. Like when I knew I was supposed to come to University of Florida, like there was no way to describe it, but I was deciding between University of Virginia, which would have been on paper like the easier option, just because I was close to my family, very much homebody, and that would have been 2 hours from home. But I just felt pulled to go to Florida, and it was so out of my comfort zone. But I was like, okay, like I need to go here. Went here, was radically changed my freshman year. I got involved with, we call it Big Monday. It's like Athletes in Action and Made for More. They're groups that like combine and they make Big Monday, and got involved there. And we have like 80 student athletes that are part of this. It's on Monday nights. And I know y'all have it at Georgia too. You have a huge group. But yeah, so I was radically changed, and I started doing discipleship. I started doing small groups, and I started saying yes. And I just felt like the Lord kept being like, say yes, say yes. Like obedience was my huge word. So that was awesome. And then my sophomore year of college, I got my first stress fracture. And then from there, I just realized when running is taken from you, like how much my identity wasn't in the sport, and how the Lord needed me to be without it so that I could know that I'm so much more than just a runner. And yeah, ever since then, I'd been through the ringer with injuries, and I had moments where I came back, and then I had moments where I was down, and last year was really tough. I basically would run for 3 weeks, get hurt again, run through for three. And it was just this cycle. And I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. And, the Lord puts people in your life for a reason. And he put Allison in my life. I know for a huge reason. And she had the exact same story, which is like really incredible. So she mentored me through this. And we have on my house, so we live together now. We didn't live together the past 2 years because she lived somewhere else when she moved in as a transfer. But she lives with me now. And this house, we have something called prayer porch, and it's the back porch. And she'd be like, hey, can I come over for prayer porch? And I'd be like, I need prayer porch. And we would just spend time just like crying out there. I don't know if I'm like sharing too much about our personal.
It's very therapeutic. Like it's just a porch back there. And we've had so many deep conversations back there. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like people go through hard things, and I feel like we do a really good job of letting it out. Like immediately when you feel it, immediately when you get that bad news, like we both have been injured a fair amount of times. And whenever we get that, the MRI results that are not what you wanted to hear, we just go back there and we talk about it. And it usually starts in tears, but it ends in like, oh, like, wow, thank you, Jesus, like, thank you for this friendship. Thank you for, I don't know, like the opportunity to take this time to, mentor and to share our stories through the hard things. But
yeah, I love that prayer porch. That is like the cutest thing ever. I love that. But also like what you guys are talking about is how cool it is when we carry each other's burdens. Like the Lord calls us to do that. And like what a gift your friendship is, that God used your sport to bring you guys together, but now you carry each other's burdens. Like you're glorifying him together through your podcast. That is just such a testament to like who God is and to who you guys are beyond running. Again, like you are more than running, and God has just shown that through both of your stories. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. And like just when I reflect on like my time at Florida, like I think both of us could say the same thing like in our NCAA careers, but like coming in, obviously like you sit down, you have your recruiting, you have your talk with the coaches, and they're like, you're going to accomplish this and this and this and you're going to do this for the team, and you're going to get this award. And it's like when I had my like exit meeting, and I was like, it was an honor to be part of the Gators, but like I'm, saying goodbye. I was like, I'm so sorry I didn't accomplish any of the things that you like said I was going to accomplish. And I just had a heart to heart with my coach, and he was like, okay, but Caroline, like the person that you've become since coming to this team is far greater, and something you're going to take into your future, far greater than anything you could have accomplished on this track. And he was like, that the Lord had you here for a purpose. That God had you here to honestly save you, and to save you from yourself, to save you from this world, to save you from honestly like your sin. And you had to come here to become the person that God has you to be. And that wasn't built in your identity on the track. And so I know that the Lord had us both here at Florida for purposes greater than running, honestly. I mean, because neither of our careers probably went the way that we envisioned it was going to go. So.
Right.
It ended way better than I could have prayed for,
Well, that is amazing. I love that. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about Beyond the Struggle. I want to know how you guys started, where the idea came from, how you guys got the name, all the details.
I love this story. Yeah. So it was my 6th year. Was it my 5th or my 6th year? I always forget.
Your 6th year.
My 6th year. Okay.
The fall.
So it was the fall of my 6th year, which was 2024. And I was freaking out. If you know me, like I love a plan. I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a huge planner with a lot of things in my life, but I feel like I have become someone who at least wants to know what's next. If I'm going to graduate, what's my job going to be? Things like that. And so I had no idea. I'm very indecisive, and I was kind of between a bunch of different career options. And on top of that, I had to apply for a job, and I didn't know what to do. And I was in our like academic building, kind of like where our study rooms and everything are. And we have a bunch of like academic advisors. Advisors and a bunch of different like other staff as well. And I say that she's my mentor because I really think she's my mentor. But there's a woman that works there, and sometimes I would go sit in her office and just kind of talk to her about life and, all the things. And I was like, Vicky, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. I was freaking out, spiraling. And she was like, Allison, what do you want to do with your life? What is something that you've wanted to do? It might not bring in money, but something that you're passionate about. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to start a podcast. And, we just started talking about that. And it's funny because I had bought a podcast mic like 3 years prior, but I had never used it. I honestly think it was kind of like my motivator, like one day I'm going to start this, but I had no idea of like what it was going to be about. I had no idea what, the concept was going to be. And so I was talking to Vicky and I was like, yeah, I want to start this, but I'm like naturally a little bit more shy and reserved. And I was like, Vicky, I don't know how I'm going to do this alone. And she was like, you should just have like a co-host on there. And she started showing me examples of other podcasters that she's listened to and looked up to. And she's like, all these people have co-hosts. Like you could totally have someone on there with you. And I immediately thought about Carol. I was like, she would be such a good co-host. She's very outgoing. And I feel like we balance each other out very well. And so I texted her and I was like, hey, Carol, like, would you want to start this podcast with me? And she was like very on board. And I don't remember like all the details that went into actually coming up with a concept and everything. But one person that really inspired me was Simone Biles. And I really, really love her story because I think she came out with a documentary on Netflix, and she talks about mental health and kind of the behind the scenes of what like actually went on behind her performance. And I think a lot of people look at her as like this stellar athlete, very decorated. I look up to her. I had no idea the mental health struggles that she battled through and the things that happened behind the scenes. And I think it made it very real, and it kind of allowed me to look into that and be like, wow, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than we know and we think. And I also was thinking how many other people's stories out there have not been told that need to be told. And Simone Biles is very, highly decorated. She's up there, has so many Instagram followers, so everybody knows about her story. But what about, Joe Schmo who has 2 followers on Instagram? Like, I want to tell his story, And so that was the whole idea behind Beyond the Struggle. And as far as the name, I don't really know like how we came up with that, but the big thing was kind of getting beyond the struggle, because Carol and I, both of our stories are very similar with injuries, struggle, like the struggle is real, and we want to be real, raw, and honest on our podcast. So I think that's kind of the name. And if you have any more details too, I'm like completely blanking on exactly how we came up with the name, but that was kind of the whole concept behind it.
Yeah, I just remember, like, I don't remember how we came up with the name either, but I do remember we started on prayer porch outside. And we were like, okay, we just had our laptop, this one mic that plugged in, and you had to sit so close to the computer in order for it to hear you. And we've grown a lot since then. But our first guest was Gabby Essex on our volleyball team. And we did one solo episode, and then we actually started with her, and we just were like, we're going to bring on a new athlete each week. And so we just started in our little community here, and we had a golfer, we had track runner, like we had multiple people. Then we were like, okay, we're going to branch out a little bit. We started bringing on some of our old teammates that are Olympians, and they're, gold medalists in the Olympics and things like that. And then we started to get a little bit more following through that. And then we started to get people like recommending people. And then we're like, okay, sure, we'll have these people. And it's been a true testament to like, if you change one life, like even if you just touch one life, it's worth it. And we've had people come up to us at the rec centers, come up to us and just be like, we listen to your podcast and we love it. Like, keep doing that. We've had awesome testimonies without sharing things, but just of like people listening to stories and getting cured from depression and like things like that due to cancer diagnoses and things like that. So it's been a huge blessing. Wow. It's been a way that the Lord has really showed like the power of saying yes and the power of obedience. And it started with Allison and just her big yes. And so it's really awesome to see. She's a dreamer and she accomplishes, no, I'm serious. And she accomplishes anything she puts her mind to. And so it's just been so cool to see like this yes turn into a lot of yeses that has furthered her sanctification
Thank you for
process,
saying
you know?
that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I'm
That's
laughing
awesome.
because I have a lot of crazy ideas, and I kid you not, I feel like I come out every week of my room and I'm like, guys, I'm gonna do this with my life. And then like the next day they're like, oh, have you like, is there any progress on it? And I'm like, so about that, I've pivoted. I'm gonna do this new idea.
No, but like you are gonna accomplish all the things that you
I hope
truly desire to do, you know?
I gotta pray about it. That's the thing. Sometimes I jump into things and I really have to give it time. But I really appreciate you saying that.
That's awesome. Okay, so how long has Beyond the Struggle been going then?
I think it's been like 2 years.
No, it's been a year and a half.
A year and a half.
A year and a half?
Yeah.
Wait, we need to celebrate
Awesome.
our year and a half anniversary.
Yes.
Oh, that's so awesome. You have been doing it for a couple years now, and you've gotten to talk with other athletes, and then also like had people come up to you being like, oh my gosh, this is so inspiring, which is just a true testament to the Lord, because this random person in the rec center like listens to your podcast. Like, how'd they even find it? Like, that's so cool. But what do you guys think is like the biggest top thing that God has taught you through Beyond the Struggle and having your own podcast?
I think it's honestly been the power of saying yes and the power of prayer. And I just love like the testimonies that we've heard from everyone, like from all the people we've talked to. And I think it's just a true testament to like the Lord having his hand on every single aspect of our lives, and like why we ended up together, why I ended up as her host, like why he so perfectly put us in the same place at the same time. I think it's just a power of saying yes and like being obedient to what you feel God calling you to do,
Yeah, I think the podcast has been such a big gift because I have received so much spiritual warfare because of the podcast. Like the amount of times I've felt sick before a podcast. Like we had a couple on our podcast. It was our first ever couples episode. And probably about 2 hours before, I was like, Carol, I don't think I can record today. I feel really sick. I don't feel right. I mean, I was really, really out of it. And she was like, okay, like let's wait a little bit. And if you don't feel well before, then we can cancel it. And I was like, yeah, that's a good plan. And so I was just really praying through it. And I still felt really like iffy, but we ended up still recording. And I kid you not, as soon as we sat on the couch and recorded, everything went away. And I've really been going through that a lot lately, like random health things. And then our equipment, just random things breaking, like our mics, like these mics that are, I would say like pretty nice mics, randomly broke the other day, and we prayed over the mics and we were like, God, please heal the mics, and he healed them and now they're great. And so just random things have happened. And so I think like Carol's spot on with the obedience, and if you say yes, if you just get through it, he will bring you so much fruit. And I think the podcast episodes where we had a lot of spiritual warfare, equipment wasn't working, whatever it may be, those were some of our best episodes. And so that's been really cool. And then I also think he's taught me specifically boldness, because I think that's one of my words for 2026 is to be bold. And naturally, I'm not someone who would be mic'd up. I'm kind of like the background person, like fixing the lights, making sure everything's going well. And so the fact that I'm a part of running the show, that's definitely not something I had in the cards. Definitely not something I was ever really comfortable with. And so I think it's really cool how God will put you front and center, even if you don't feel equipped for it. And so he's really taught me what can happen if you choose to be bold. So that's been really cool.
Beam boldly.
Yes.
Literally. I was going to say, like, that's what, like, a huge part of this podcast. It's literally in the name. So that is so cool. And I love that. And I think, Carol, you were talking about stepping into, what God is calling you to do, like saying yes. You both kind of talked about obedience. And I feel like there's somebody listening to this that's like, okay, but how do I know what God is telling me to do? And so you guys can kind of like tag onto this, but to that person that is like, okay, I hear what they're saying, but I don't really know how to like apply that to my life because I don't know what God is saying. I don't know where he's pulling me. That is where you pull out the word, you pull out your Bible and like just start reading what he says because yes, literally like we were kind of joking about like it would be so great to hear God's like audible voice all the time, right? Like God, what should I have to eat? And he's like, "Oh, pizza, go eat that." You know? Like that would be so easy, but it doesn't work like that, but he gave us the Bible, he gave us his word so that we can learn more about him, grow closer, and then start to see where he is more in our lives and therefore where we're being pulled towards, right? So what do you guys kind of have to like tag on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I have a personal story that actually just recently happened with this, but I was about to graduate in December and I was trying to decide between two jobs for the spring. And first of all, in the fall, I prayed. I was like, Lord, I need a job. I need a job. He gave me two really great options. One of them was an option in ministry, and one was in vocational ministry here at Florida. And then one was my current job, which is I'm a marketing and partnerships coordinator for an energy drink company called Running Lights. And I basically was like, Lord, I need you to make this decision for me because I was praying and there were both sides of it and I felt guilty for not taking the ministry route, but I just wasn't feeling 100% peaceful in it. And I was like, Lord, like I'm not going to be doing your will if I don't take this ministry route. Why do I not feel like, I don't know, I just felt like I was being pulled both ways and I was like, God, make your will so known to me. Show me, like illuminate my path. And I just felt like I wasn't hearing from the Lord. And I usually hear from him through peace. I usually hear from him through I'll be praying and then I open up to a random page in the Bible and it'll just like it's like the words come off the page. But I was praying and I just felt it on my heart that I needed to text one of my friends named Zach. And so I texted him. He was like, "Oh, I have this book you need to read." And so I was like, "Okay." It's called Just Do Something. I don't know who wrote it, but I really recommend it. It's a Christian book about discerning God's will for your life. It's
Oh,
awesome.
wow.
And I listened to it. It was a 2 hour and 50-minute Audible book. And I listened to it. And I kid you not, it basically said, it was like, God sometimes will make the decision very clear to you. If he has something for you, I mean, he will make it clear. I mean, Proverbs 16:9 is like, man makes his plans, but the Lord establishes his steps. Yeah, God will establish your steps. He'll make that clear. But sometimes we are given two really great options and we don't know which one to choose. And sometimes God will be silent because he's like, I've given you a brain. I've given you the ability to choose the decision for yourself. Now choose it. If you take a leap of faith and just choose one way, like don't over spiritualize it. I'm not going to leave you nor forsake you. So why would you fear? Like, Jeremiah 29:11, like, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Like, they're plans to prosper you. They're not to harm you. They're plans to give you a hope and a future. And so that's a very long-winded story of in that moment, I felt so much peace about, wait, God's letting me make the decision. Oh, so I chose the one that I desired to do a bit more. And he's blessed that in so many ways. I'm constantly journaling every single day being like, thank you for my job. Thank you for my job. Now, granted, it wasn't the vocational ministry route, but am I able to minister to people through my job? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And also along with that, like your purpose doesn't change like depending on where you are. I think about this like all the time being a gymnast. My purpose doesn't change whether I'm competing on the sidelines, at practice, at church, right? Like either way, the purpose is to shine Jesus' light, to show his love through your actions. Basically, your job is to like be an example of the Lord to others, no matter where you are. Your job is to shine his light. And I love that in that story, you were like, okay, either way, I'm still gonna be good old Carol who shines Jesus' light and is, just happy, excited, joyful, like thankful. And that is going to reach people. Like God is gonna reach people as long as you're being faithful in whatever shoes you're in, you know?
Yeah, someone we had on our podcast episode, she's a pro track runner now, and something that she said that I loved was no matter where you're at, whether it's your job, whether your career is to be a professional athlete, whatever it is, you can use that as your ministry, whether you're in an office, wherever you're at. And so I thought that was so beautiful, because I think we think traditionally, your ministry has to be within the church. Something that I love about our church is that we have a lot of like different small groups that meet outside of the church, and our church's whole thing is the church is not just the building, it's where you're at, it's the people you're with, it's what you're talking about. You have the ability to minister other people outside of church. And so I've seen Carol do that through her job, through the way that she talks to people. She's very outgoing, she's very bubbly, she's very she asks really good questions, and I love that about you. You ask really good questions, and she cares. And so I've seen her do that, even though she didn't step into that career as like a vocational minister. She's been able to minister to people through her job, through still being involved in that community. So that's something that's super cool, and I think encouraging as well.
Yeah. Gosh, I love your guys' friendship. Like, you guys are actually like the sweetest friends. Like, that you notice that these things about each other and like are not afraid to tell one another. Like, it shows that like literally Jesus' love is like in your friendship too. And that is like so ideal. So I hope that, of all the great things we've talked about, that people are also noticing like this is an example of a Christ-centered friendship, and like those are so, so, so important in your life. So amazing. Okay, we don't have a ton of time left, but just to wrap up, I would love to hear from each of you what your final piece of advice is for a younger athlete that's trying to navigate how their faith and their sport kind of mesh.
I think the biggest thing that I've discovered, and it's a huge part of my story, is not getting lost in the sauce, not getting lost in the sport, the glitz and the glam. If you're winning, if you're on top, if you're, standing on the podium, those are great things, but those things are very, very temporary. And that's something that both Carol and I have experienced, is being successful, but we've also lived through being broken and being on the sidelines. And that's really, really hard whenever people aren't, cheering you on, things like that. So I think my biggest piece of advice is to not get lost in all of that. If you have a great race, if you have a great performance, celebrate. That's awesome. I mean, everybody loves to win. It's a great feeling, but don't allow that to dictate how you view yourself, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to reflect ourselves, we're trying to reflect Christ. And I really like the analogy, and I feel like I use it super frequently now, but like when you look in the mirror, do you see yourself or do you see Jesus? And that's how, and not to say that like we're Jesus, but to say we need to be spreading love, we need to be spreading Christ-like love. And so not losing your overall purpose, because the purpose isn't to run a super fast time on the track. Our overall purpose is kingdom purpose, it's eternal purpose. And so I think to not lose sight of that is super important.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. I second that. And like, I don't know, I feel like I would just advise you to like bloom where you're planted and like be where your feet are at. And I would say do not worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow worries about itself. Like, focus on where you're at, be present where you're at, and be exactly where your feet are. Like, I love that about surfing, because I don't know, you're right where your feet are at, and like you have to stay on the board, and there are going to be waves, and there are going to be big waves, there's going to be small waves, but like as long as you just focus on being planted where you're at, like you'll ride the wave, right? You'll ride the wave, and the Lord has great plans for your life. I don't know, that one just came in my head because my job, I have to come up with Instagram captions, and one time I was like, my theme of the year is like bloom where you're planted, and I was like, actually that's very similar to be where your feet are, and this girl, her feet are on the board, like, So anyways, long story short, you just take the wave of life, and the Lord will be with you in it. And I just feel like Jesus is telling me right now, like, invite me into all of it. But I've gotten these like visions of him and I just holding hands walking through life. And I just think that young Carol could have used that. I could have used the vision of Jesus just walking through it with me, because like we said before, like he will never leave you nor forsake you. And yeah.
I love that. That was amazing. This episode has been so much fun. And make sure that you guys stay tuned on Beyond the Struggle, because I'm going to go on to Beyond the Struggle and we're going to have an awesome conversation. So make sure that you guys stay tuned for that. But Carol and Allison, thank you so much for coming on Beam Boldly. This was an amazing conversation.
Thank
you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and we were talking about this like off camera, I'm pretty sure, but it's just so encouraging to see other athletes, like other women too, in the podcast space that are promoting athletes, faith, things like that. You just don't really see that a lot these days. And so I think that's so encouraging. Keep doing what you're doing. It's so rewarding.
Too.
Yes, it's so rewarding. We're like deep into season 2 and I feel like we're still learning. We're still navigating it, but it's been such a gift. So keep doing what you're doing. You're impacting lives. And so thank you so much for having us on.
You guys are the best. And thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Beam Boldly. Make sure that you subscribe and follow so that you can continue on this journey with me. Bye, you guys.